I thought if it was cool, I wanted to start with your dad.
Yeah, sure.
Now, he was an ad guy
He was.
and also sort of a song guy.
Yeah, my dad has had an interesting. Our dad, my sister, he's had an interesting career. He's a talented man who has never really quite 100% marshaled that great talent, although he's done some interesting things. He was a singer in the 50s. He sang on the Derby record label and did a couple of...
He's got albums.
Singles.
Sorry.
We've actually made CDs, out of them, but...
Albums are what music used to be. No, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Yeah.
So he was a boy singer in the Boston area. He had kind of an Eddie Fisher sound. I actually took Eddie Fisher's place in the Army band, and then he was scouted by Sinatra for Reprise Records. Turned down Sinatra, which was the end of his singing career, almost the end of him. And then he went into the ad game around the time of Mad Men and had an ad agency.
But he was a creative guy,
Yeah.
nonetheless. And would you ever think about like what that sort of effect on you was, for lack of a better word?
Yeah, because he did all these many things. He was a musician. He actually tried cartooning for a while. He had a cartoon published in the New Yorker, and once he would do things, he kind of went off in a different direction. So he was not the sort of dad that was really stomped down on the kids' dreams. It's sort of like, if you want to do that, that's fine. I just hope at some point, you're not coming back here to live with us, and you can sustain a career, that sort of thing.
Did it make you, when he was like, and again, I don't remember when he was specifically doing the cartooning or whatever, but like, when did you start thinking writer, or when were you just writing, even whether you were thinking this is a job one day, and obviously not specifically maybe at the time even animation, but like, were you just as a kid, were you the kid with the journal, were you the kid always sort of writing, were you making plays in the backyard, who were you?
Well, I was a kid who would retreat to his bedroom and let my imagination run wild. And if you read the book Dark Knight, there are a few pages that deal with that, where I would come home from a busy day of getting my ears whacked at school on the bus by various bullies and struggling through math class. And my only place I felt I could sort of be myself was in my bedroom, where I'd pull out books that I liked reading, whether it was Paddington Bear or James Bond or Alice in Wonderland or something.
Were there comic books there too at that point, or not?
Tons of comics. And I was an indiscriminate comic book reader, because it didn't matter if it was Iron Man or Hot Stuff or Josie and the Pussycats. If it was something I could buy off the rack at the drugstore, I would read it. And also comic strips. We subscribed to a lot of Bay Area newspapers, so between the Chronicle and the Oakland Tribune, I read Pogo, Dick Tracy, Beetle Bailey, Gordo, Doonesbury.
Were there favorites?
Yeah, the Pogo was a big favorite, even though I didn't really understand it. I loved the drawings in it, and I loved the nonsense. And yet there were long sequences where there'd be this spider that looked like Richard Nixon, or a hyena that looked like Spiro Agnew, and I had no idea what they were talking about, and I'd have to puzzle through the editorial pages just to figure out who these guys were. But I loved the drawing style. I loved Peanuts. I loved, there was a local strip called Gordo by Gus Ariola, which was really wonderful, beautiful artwork. And so it was things like that. Usually the funny stuff, less the adventure stuff.
And and at any point in there, as you're sort of in your room and whatever, are you thinking writer, or the career stuff wasn't a thought process?
Well, I was always experimenting. I was always writing. I was writing silly stories. I was trying to draw and create characters, because it was sort of the only option I could see as any sort of career option down the road. Other than I stank at sports. My dad had the performer thing, so I dabbled a little bit in singing and tried to get into some plays and stuff like that.
This is kind of now high school kind of thing?
Yeah, it's junior high into high school, it's summer school, and doing a couple of things like that.
You went to that private school
that
you sort of put into a couple of different pieces of your work.
Right.
It definitely had an effect on you.
Yeah, at around 13, 14, I began acting up, and it wasn't really anything. I began really stinking at school. I spent a lot of time in my head, and my parents said, we're going to ship you off. So they shipped me off to a boarding school called Stevenson, which is down near Monterey. It's actually a very good school, but I looked at it as going to the Gulag Archipelago. You know, it was like shipped off to Siberia, and that first year was really horrible because it was away from home. The parents were kind of mad at me, and it's like, go down there and it's sort of sink or swim time. It's a very nice school, but you know, I'm coming in with like a lousy sense of myself and natural prey for bullies. I quickly descended to the bottom of the heap, and so for the first year or two, it was pretty bad. And then I learned to stand up for myself a little bit. I got in a couple of fights. And as weird as it sounds, and as forbidden as it sounds now, I actually had to get in a couple of fights and beat up a couple of kids, and then my standing went up. Well, kind of like being in prison. So, and once I got to my junior year, it's like, okay, I could stick this out. By then, I was doing a lot of literature classes, and I was cartooning on the school paper, and I sort of honed in on what I liked doing.
And it's sort of shown up, you did the show Tower Prep.
Tower Prep.
Which was on Cartoon Network.
Right.
For a season?
Yeah, for about, 5 minutes.
About 5 minutes. I'm very familiar with that.
Yeah.
And then also wasn't there a comic that you did sort of a headmaster kind of thing in?
Yeah, it was, that was an Oni Press. It was called Honor Rollers, and that was based on, you know, 4 dopers who beat the crap out of me every day at school. I mean, I found myself with these guys from Beverly Hills and Hillsborough who came in, and they had massive trust funds, and they were the kids who were always out in the woods smoking up and everything, and I was sitting on my bed, you know, like terrified like Beaker and the Muppets, and they would come in and they'd wail the tar out of me, and I'd say, isn't marijuana supposed to mellow you out? And I go, well, you think so, but bam!
It was a very aggressive strain.
Yes, but actually, after taking it for a couple of months, I realized the more they had, the slower their reaction time was. So at one point I tested it, and I actually, you know, took a guy down while he was throwing a punch. I threw 3 in his face. He went down. He went screaming to the headmaster, who smelled the marijuana on him, and I got a new roommate after that, and that's when my standing began to grow up a little bit.
But interesting, I mean, other than you beating people up, which is what people wanted to hear.
Of course.
You know, I don't know, I guess I was always very fascinated by the fact that how much sort of creative juice you got out of a very miserable time in your life.
Yeah, you take what you.
And in some ways, you know, with Dark Knight, which are you guys all familiar with Dark Knight? I think that's something that, you know, just throughout your career in a really wonderful way, that you've been able to do. Most people can't do that. You know, most people can't forget about reconcile it in their own life, but actually channel it into art. Which, I mean, do you ever think about the fact that you've done that multiple times?
Yeah, and I think that I was able to do that because when I was growing up, I listened to a lot of comedy. I listened to Bill Cosby, Woody Allen, all the stand-up comedians.
All the great pedophiles. Did you get Mort Saul in there? Just anybody who hasn't been arrested?
I was getting Albert Brooks.
Okay, there we go. Albert Brooks.
But there was Carlin and stuff like that. But they got people who use their personal experience in ways. So, you know, they would tell a story like. And it would be hyperbole and things made funny, but it would be sort of like their observation, their point of view. And I read a lot of Mark Twain and a lot of James Thurber, and Perlman were, you know, a lot of the humor writers I read at that time. And especially Thurber, who took kind of a self-deprecating, you know, little guy type attitude toward him, and I always loved him. I always loved writing like that. So I think that kind of gave me a little bit of a background to tell stories, to go from what is horrible or upsetting in my life and see if I can get a laugh out of it, or at least go for some sort of common hook to somebody else's experience.
It's good. It's like live therapy.
Yeah, it is.
Too.
Yeah,
you definitely get to work through the stuff. It's sort of a fascinating sort of run in your career.
Yeah.
So then you ended up at Emerson in Boston, but you were almost, I think while you were still in Emerson, you sold the first idea or something?
Yeah, what happened was...
And are you still cartooning at Emerson too? Because he's a very good, I don't know if anyone's ever gotten a